Standing on the shoulders of the legendary 4X series that has captivated millions over the decades, Civilization VI holds a special place in the pantheon of gaming. But as countless players have explored the complexities of this game, there's one question none of them seem to ask. What is the true goal of Civilization? To achieve victory? To conquer deity? To farm achievements? Sure, those are all part of it, but the deeper meaning, the one that is echoed through all 7 games, the goal of Civilization is to stand the test of time. This question has lingered in my mind for quite some time, especially after my masterful display in the last challenge. But despite the victory, the curiosity it sparked left me emptier than ever. There was a sense of unfulfillment, a gnawing desire to understand the true meaning behind this game, and so I made a decision. It wasn't enough to simply play the game, I needed to achieve something that would stand the test of time. Enter the final chapter in this incredible journey through Civ 6. I choose a leader near and dear to my heart, Driptro, with whom I would set out to create a record so monumental that it would reshape the way we think about the game itself. But what record, you ask? All of them. This wasn't just about finishing the game or reaching arbitrary milestones. No, this was about achieving the highest possible yields in every category. A display of power that would truly stand the test of time. Now, for this challenge to even be possible, I knew I had to push the boundaries of what most players would deem reasonable. So I selected a massive TSL Earth map, filled it with the most daunting civs on each continent, and set myself a task so challenging it could have spelled disaster. But here's the twist. I wasn't playing on deity difficulty, a decision that almost lost me this challenge. But despite this Herculean challenge that lay before me, I was not only determined to triumph, but more importantly, had hope. Hope in the fact that I was the only civilization in the Americas, and so I would have about 150 turns to discover my surroundings and formulate a plan that will stand the test of time. But time itself is not my ally, as I have 150 turns until the AI discovers my isolated continent, and so we can't afford to idle and immediately work to figure out a long-term plan to build up my new empire. But to answer that game-changing question, we would first need to uncover the secrets of our undiscovered continent. So I settled the city of Rio and waste no time in completely warping my standard build order. With barbarians disabled and no civilizations to wreak havoc nearby, it makes sense to forego an early military in favor of 2 scouts to uncover the secrets of the vast South America. And this decision immediately pays dividends, as up north our discovery of a natural wonder boosts the astrology technology hiding the holy site, which is critical as spreading your founded religion increases the most difficult modifier we're aiming for. Score. But it was the future beliefs of this religion that would really crack this game open. For now, I've determined that the continent was filled to the brim with jungles which would serve as an excellent chop to quickly boost new food and production in my founded cities. So I quickly worked to make use of this bonus with my newfound settler. But the weakness of jungle starts is their limited production in the early game, which is rectified by the Pantheon Lady of Reeds and Marshes. But even that production would pale to the yields of the best natural wonder in the game, giving me 2 excellent city locations for early development. So which city would you settle first? Well, the answer for me is the northern location for the chop benefits, and in conjunction with the new trader I use to trade for food in my capital, this will no doubt be one of my more powerful cities. And that is quite the honor considering all the potential city locations my scouts have discovered. Too many locations for my capital to settle alone, which is the reason I immediately start on the government plaza. The reason why is revealed when we select our Tier 2 government classical republic, as we can now build the ancestral hall for a massive boost to settlers that will themselves start with a leg up from the free builder. But even that is underselling the magnitude of the builders, who will eventually have up to 5 charges once we reach feudalism. Before that, my cities would receive a different boost from religion, as my great prophet has given me the ability to purchase science and culture buildings with faith, before continuing to boost my science with cross-culture dialogue. Now this may seem strong, but the key to this religion is the evangelization belief, which we can't unlock just yet. While we wait on that, my builder chops out the ancestral hall in my capital, who will now begin to focus solely on settler production. Up to now, we've played what I'd consider my standard game for Civilization, as I still didn't have a plan in mind that would allow me to break the game. But at the very least, the flexibility all these cities provides keeps my options open, since one of the main factors of every yield is the amount of people living in my empire. Yields that will be boosted by Pingala to make my way through the tech tree faster, a critical component to the strategy I have in mind. But whether I want to commit to that strategy remains to be seen as I continue down the standard build path, aimless and without focus. A fact that was all about to change. You see, I decided that my capital was doing well enough building settlers, so my second city began to focus on more advanced build-up. But just as I was about to construct the commercial hub, I saw what would become my saving grace. Look at all these yields. Yields made possible thanks to my sentimental leader choice, as Pedro gains adjacency for the predominant tile found in my starting continent. Jungles. And so what would normally be a +2 or 3 bonus ended up reaching 5 and 6, not just for commercial hubs, but for every district in the game. And with the right policy cards, the game was now on a timer until Brazil's yields would explode to heights unforeseen until now. But this potential would only stay as such until I settled every possible city on this continent, and so my settler production began kicking into overdrive. But relying solely on the unreliable production would make this settler effort challenging, which is why for the medieval era, I realized that I had one last chance to get monumentality and thus needed a golden age. And the optimal way to use this start to obtain the golden age was to spread my religion with exodus of the evangelists. For now, the few settlers we were able to produce were exploring every corner of the Amazon, settling cities, and constructing trade buildings. But the most important objective for these young cities was to convert my era score, but even then would be nowhere near enough for the golden age. No, for the golden age we so desperately seek, we would once again turn to the Amazon, as every +5 district provided an enormous amount of era score. But this effective 1-2 punch was endangered, as the faith required for my religious units needed to be stored for the eventual settler purchase from monumentality, and so I decided on a more optimal pathway to conversion. I would first need a temple in my capital to purchase the apostle that would evangelize my belief, and with the extra faith provided by my faith-focused game, the secret society of choice was a no-brainer, as the Void Singers would grant 4 faith to all monuments whilst taking 20% of my total faith and distributing it to every major stat in the game. But these already respectable stats would no doubt be higher if I decided to settle my waiting settler. But I practiced restraint until my apostle finally evangelized the one belief that would change my game: religious colonization. Now every city I settled would start with my religion, giving me the era score from my dedication, while saving the faith to rapidly expand in the Renaissance. The Golden Age felt inevitable, my cities were thriving, my settlers were multiplying, and my districts were coming online at a blistering pace. But then, disaster would strike. The era is ending on turn 100? No, that can't be right. I felt my heart sinking as the countdown had begun, and right before midnight, I was still 2 crucial points away. And then, a desperate last-minute gambit I had been saving all along. Boats. You see, I hadn't built a single naval unit in the entire game, and now with everything on the line, I spent my gold on my first galley, and as it set sail, a mix of relief and triumph washed over my body as the impossible had been done. And to further boost this saving grace, I decided to enact a theocracy for even stronger religious power, which thanks to Chorus translated to stat increases across the board. Stats that were working towards a singular goal that I had finally achieved: settling the entirety of South America, with jungle adjacencies just waiting to be exploited. But to actually make use of those adjacencies, I would need the districts, which themselves were restricted to 1 district for every 3 population. And so I would need to stay patient as I waited to unlock every district I could to maximize adjacency, but while the build-up was continuing, I met the first civilization in this game, which was when he caught my eye, as I couldn't help but give a live Yongle reaction when I saw that he had these yields before turn 140, and as the cogs in my brain began to turn, everything finally made sense. The reason that the eras were progressing at lightning speed was because the AI was forcing the era ahead by almost completing the tech tree before half the game had even passed. And so the question you're asking is how? The reason will be revealed later, as for now we have a goal to reach: building my settlers, districts, and population as more and more high-powered leaders prove that Yongle's numbers weren't just a fluke. And while my numbers were steadily improving, I knew in the back of my mind that my plans had to change. To catch up to the more advanced civilizations, I needed more cities, and so continued my slow crawl up America, and as bad as losing this game will hurt, I had to remind myself that you don't win the game by crossing an imaginary milestone. A realization that calmed my nerve as I continued maximizing my city's potential by securing Galapagos and Bermuda Triangle. But there was a fatal flaw in my plan. Once the other leaders realized that they could walk through my territory faster than Germany walking through France, I would have no chance against their advanced weaponry. And as I looked at my now well-developed continent, it hit me. A way to knock out two birds with a single stone. As of now, I have a large amount of cities, but evidently nowhere near enough to catch up to the AI powered like the Monstars. But settling more cities wouldn't just solve this conundrum, it would solve my defense. You see, the way the AI determines they want to declare war is most importantly based on three factors. How weak you are, can they keep any cities conquered, and how close they are to your empire. And so the best way to minimize all three factors is to settle every possible city in North America, blocking them out. And so the second mass colonial project began just as I lost access to my biggest weapon. But despite that, with all the buildup of my now strong South American empire, I had more than enough money in production to achieve the 30 or so settlers I needed to complete the colonies. And after I finished the Nevada Petra, I would have another enormous city that would aid in this settler project. But until then, I would need to tread carefully and use the advanced technology of the other civilizations to my advantage. While most of them did indeed denounce me at one point or another, the fact that they had all denounced each other made me confident that they wouldn't invade my primitive people just yet. In fact, by trading away my excess American exclusive luxuries for a quick cash infusion before buying theirs for relatively cheap, I established a trading relationship that would soon warm even the coldest hearts out there. And better yet, the significant trade imbalance gave me the gold needed to purchase whatever buildings or traders I so desired to further boost growth in all my newer cities, especially in the newly constructed Petra, as this would soon become my strongest base in North America, at least until the late game. But that wasn't the only good city, as they'd all improved extremely quickly as my ranking kept improving bit by bit. But this wasn't compounding fast enough. And if the AI did decide to attack me, then this challenge run would no doubt be over. And so to remedy that, I needed to catch up in strength. But you see the military numbers, don't you? How could I possibly come to match that in such a short time? Well, not by building units myself, but by allying one of the stronger nations, as their military strength would now be factored into any potential declaration of war. And if even that wasn't enough, my process of keeping my head down and money up meant that I was finally able to complete the great American Settler Project that finally guaranteed my safety and confirmed the potential I had to eventually overtake the monstrous AI. But to realize that potential, I would now need to do what I did previously in South America, although this new build-up would be more challenging as I don't have the powerful Amazon to supercharge my adjacency. But despite that setback, there was one factor I neglected that actually turned what should have been a more difficult development scheme into a significantly easier one. For South America, we were restricted in what we could chop out because our entire strategy hinged on having jungles available for adjacency. But this isn't the case for the much less jungles and much more forested North America, where everything was chopped for the purpose of industrial development. And with our 5 charge builders committing more atrocities to North America than the dreaded English blanket, our northern cities were up and running in record time. But they wouldn't hold a candle to our South American power base after unlocking the most important tile improvement in the game, lumber mills on jungle tiles, simultaneously boosting the yields of those tiles while keeping the adjacency benefits. But none of that would help me stave off defeat, as on turn 212, Yongle has just crushed my dreams and won a science victory. And after running through all the potential scenarios in my head of what I could have done, I soon realized that there was nothing I could do. Not when he won on turn 212. But as devastating as this arbitrary victory was, you have to realize that he didn't really win this game, at least not the broader game of civilization, because the wheels of time stop for no achievement. even victory, now that the entirety of our vast empire was built up to modern standards. But despite that build-up, why are we still so far behind the AI? Was it even possible to catch up to these ludicrous stats, or would we be doomed to last place for the rest of the game? Well, to answer the question of why we are still so far behind, there is a factor we've missed. Civilization isn't a linear scaling game. As a quick example, the library might give 2 science, but the research lab could give up to 20 if powered properly. And that goes for all late game unlocks like the other tier 3 buildings, and most importantly, governments, as democracy is going to give our previously capped out empire a seat amongst the world's titans. But despite the strength of democracy, there's still one government that will break this game open. But until then, we finally unlock the last tier 3 building as I go to work building all of them, while ensuring I have the coal and oil to keep the lights on, primarily for our research labs to answer one of life's biggest questions. What the fuck are the Mavericks smoking? Well, at least they'll have the freedom to smoke whatever Walter White concocts thanks to our democracy government unlocking, but why did I select this specific government and not communism for the science and production bonuses? Well, the answer is simple. Now, my trade routes to allies give me every yield I could possibly want for this challenge. Now equipped with even stronger cities, soon my yields would continue climbing as every tier 3 building would unlock new heights of development, all thanks to the trade routes to India, which supported my alliance point generation enough to unlock the second tier of military alliance, which reveals the entire map without having the satellite constructed, the revelation of which ironically revealed the most important factor in this game. I had a decisive city advantage over every other leader, and thus my potential was substantially higher despite their enormous bonuses. And the way to fulfill that potential is to deal with the Achilles heel that has hampered me throughout the game, my complete lack of amenities. This was patched up temporarily by the luxuries the AI was willing to part with now that my international standing had improved enough to open trading relations. But we needed more, and soon a well-placed Colosseum provided most of the amenities I needed, with the rest being provided by the Brazilian unique district that was finally enough to keep every city I had in the positives, and eventually lead to me crossing the 1000 science per turn threshold, with culture soon to follow after I unlock the final government I would need in this game. Distributed sovereignty gives every city a flat 2 amenities to reach the 25% bonus to all yields when a city reaches +5 amenities, but it also provides a second bonus, 2 culture for every district in this game, the combination of which vaulted my yields to match and at times exceed the world's greatest powers. But as incredible as this feeling was to finally match the leaders that had looked down on me for so long, these yields aren't exactly world record worthy, but I did need to use these yields for an important task that would make them world record worthy, to catch up in technological development to every other civilization in the game, so that I could finally reveal my secret master plans to all of you. And so the progress continues. As the higher my population goes, the more yields I gain in every category. And this rapid growth leads to not just a golden age, but a heroic one, which grants 3 incredible bonuses that I will not be making use of, aside from one. The reason for that is we already have researched every technology in the game and are stuck repeatedly researching the future tech. The best technology for this challenge, as it provides an increase to score every time you research it at the cost of 3,500 science. And so if we can somehow find a way to improve our science to that benchmark, we will be in perfect position to potentially eclipse even 100,000 score. But the future civics tech is still a ways away thanks to our lagging culture numbers, and so we focus on rectifying that lag to maximize our score. But I am worried that my current cities are not enough to achieve the needed 3,500 science and culture, so I elect to settle the Arctic, as the sunny city of San Francisco holds the key to cracking this game wide open. And so I send everything. Builders, traders, resources, anything to make that cracking possible, which will be explained shortly because first, we'd finally done it. Reaching the end of the civic tree as our score farming can now finally begin in earnest. But there's still one final challenge for the rest of my cities before we can finally maximize their potential. title, the Civ Development Program. The yields I'm working on are science, culture, faith, gold, and score, and so the final plan for all my cities is to maximize all these yields. And the way to do that is to get 5 specific districts in every city. The first of those are obviously the campus and theater squares, but it's the 3rd and 4th districts that truly make this plan possible. Because this was a large map made for 12 players while only including 6, that means we had 7 religion slots and so 7 potential great prophets. Because of that, there is always going to be 1 remaining great prophet that will allow us to exploit this game to the fullest. You see, for every excess great prophet point you make, you gain an increase to your faith per turn, which because of Horus translates to every other yield in the game. And the way to obtain the most great prophet points is a holy site festival which converts production into faith as well as great prophet points. And the way to get production is, of course, the 4th district, the industrial zone and its factories. But it's the final district that might be the most vital of all, granting every yield I just discussed in massive quantities, the neighborhood. Because Petra doesn't just give adjacency to nearby districts, he also turns jungles from -1 appeal to +1. And in comes the neighborhood, which gains housing based on the tile's appeal, which means that every city can reliably obtain the maximum 6 housing neighborhood, which in turn increases my population and thus my yields. And with all these bonuses working in conjunction, I was able to achieve each of these districts in the vast majority of my cities except for one, because San Francisco was busy building the rarest wonder in the game, the Amundsen Scott Research Center. Now the reason this wonder is so rare is because you need a campus on the worst tile in the game, snow tiles, which provides quite literally 0 yields. So what does this wonder do? Well, if you have at least 5 snow tiles within 3 tiles of the city center, then this wonder gives every city in your empire a game-changing 40% boost to science and 20% boost to production. And as my master plan comes together, I take my new title as the strongest civilization in this game. But looking at these numbers, I know there's one question you're dying to ask. How, with less than 20 cities, does the deity AI have these yields? Well, like I said before, this isn't deity. This is Sid Meier. If you venture to the Steam workshop of Civ 6 and type deity++, you will come upon a mod that completely changes the game, unlocking 5 additional difficulties above deity. But the mystery is, if I wanted to break the Civ 6 record for all these yields, why would I give myself this handicap? Well, if you scroll down, you will find a setting to change the way difficulties work in this mod. You can completely remove the AI's extra starting units and instead seek to permanently improve their yields by quite literally an impossible to compete margin. This bonus will allow the AI to unlock the entire tech tree within 150 turns, which they will then use their massive production and food bonuses to efficiently work on their cities, improving tiles and building all the districts. And thus, by spending the entire game up to this point developing my lands, staying unbothered in my own lane, I allowed them to do the same. And now I can use my enormous giant death robot army to take over their powerful cities and reach the highest possible yields you can in Civilization 6. It was finally done. With the only remaining civilization being Gandhi, we would soon have everything we could ever want. The last step to achieving what no other Civ in the game, human or otherwise, ever has. But it wasn't meant to be. You see, by controlling over 234 cities, I was at a point where the PC was laboring to finish, to the point where it was taking upwards of 20 minutes to load a turn. And with Gandhi's military alliance that has helped me so much active for another 17 turns, it would take days just to have the opportunity to begin to conquer him, let alone the 130 or so turns I would need to reach the benchmark of turn 500. And so, as a reward for my oldest ally, I would in fact not be raining fire down his vulnerable cities, instead peacefully deleting him from existence and replacing his cities with new ones, anticlimactically becoming the final independent civilization on Earth. But this wasn't enough. How would I factor in the lost 130 turns of rapid growth my empire was experiencing. Well, I was prepared for this reality, as I know more than anybody what unhandled exceptions can do to a game. And that is where the God mod comes in, my final two-step process. The first strategy is simple. Settle on every landmass I can find. But at one population, these cities are not enough to make a difference. How do I factor in the lost 140 turns of population growth? Well, the answer is simple. I can't, but I can limit the damage. By setting every city at 25 population, I can hit the minimum average I calculated using the age-old mathematician's trick of guessing. But even still, cities without districts aren't enough. I needed to maximize my yields, but again, there was a problem. With over 250 cities and the lag reaching unbearable levels, I can't add in all the districts I want to, so I settle for just one. Holy sites and their buildings are erected everywhere, and after the grueling 2-hour process, I would then focus on holy site prayers for the great prophet points, and of course the faith, as I capped out at over 20,000 faith per turn and finished the bare minimum of what I would accomplish if I had a NASA PC. And so now for the final numbers. Well, here are my final yields, as I obtained the highest science and culture ever obtained in Civ history. And the other two yields, well, there's an issue. I didn't know how much money or faith I'd make over the next 140 turns, and so the gold number is assuredly lower than it would have been, but still monstrous, whilst the faith is once again the highest faith total ever recorded in Civilization history. And so in my final Civilization 6 game, playing as my favorite leader, I think it is safe to say that I did indeed fulfill Sid Meier's prophecy and stood the test of time.